I am unashamed. What about you?
All right, welcome to Unashamed. We're back. We're back in the lair. Feels like we just barely got here, Jase.
I'm glad to be back. I mean, the last podcast I did, I left and went straight to the airport.
Which I'm doing today, by the way. So it's just like the cycle continues.
I come rolling in yesterday on fumes.
Yeah, we're 800 miles apart, Al.
I know
right
it.
now, but tonight we will dine together.
We'll dine together, and Lord willing, tomorrow when we do the next couple of podcasts, I'll be with you, Zach, zooming into here with y'all here. It's just
Y'all gonna be like sitting beside each other?
yeah, we'll be right there together in Zach's
You can
library
see the
lair.
couches that are that are in front of me, which will also serve as a place for Al to sleep.
Yeah, so
tonight,
Zach, the difference in Zach's studio is he's got it's kind of like this one. It's a nice little apartment, but he's actually got sleeping quarters, and so I'm actually going to be staying in studio. Maybe I could do some time lapse photography of sleeping and.
Nah, well, I think we're good.
So look, it's a Monday, so we got a lot of travels, I'm sure, to talk about. But I have to mention it because I know Dad would be so hurt if we didn't mention that today is his birthday, which
It is.
I know when you woke up this morning, Dad, you were just
Well, it hurts more when you find out it is your 77th birthday.
77.
Well, happy birthday.
But you did get a year back recently, right? Didn't
Yeah,
you get a year
because a few
back somehow?
podcasts ago, he thought he was going to be 78, but you're only
He picked up a year.
Yeah, give or take a few, that's-
So y'all got big plans? Y'all going to have a big party? And
No, this is not your normal Robertson birthday. I said, get off the birthday because we got so many. The family has grown so large. Every week, there's somebody that's the month they were born.
oh, I know. Yeah, I know. My neighborhood's
they
full of-
celebrate them with.
Oh yeah,
Passion.
it's a cake a week around my neighborhood. I figured y'all were having a big blowout down here.
yeah,
Well, I had one recently.
cattle
He turned,
and
what's
women.
that, 75?
Are prone
No,
to
you're way off.
stampede.
Size is 3 days from now.
He just had it.
Oh, I thought
No, he just had the party early.
They called that intervening because I said, I'm taking a trip. So if y'all want to help me celebrate my birthday, do it a week early. It was a hint. So Phil's like, don't tell me happy birthday. Si's on the opposite. He's like,
Si's all about the big party.
where's the party? What are we eating? And what are we doing?
Did you go to Si's party?
Al, I've been in parts unknown.
Oh,
No,
so
I
you
was
been-
invited, but I was
well,
out
me
of town.
too, but I was out of town.
I've been gone a week.
Yeah, I know they had crawfish, and he had some of his poker buddies there.
And look, I thought yesterday that I was not going to be here because when we got delayed, just to show you how the weather changes, we got delayed because there was frost on the airplane, so they had to spray it off. I mean, it's cold where I was. It's like, well, we're not going to make it. And so when we landed in Dallas, Jep was like, well, do we run? Or, we were like, as we're deplaning, we're getting a strategy because it's like 15 minutes before the next one takes off.
Oh boy,
I was like, I'm not running. I'm done with running.
Yeah.
Because the one time I did run, they were closing the door, and then they're like, nope, door's closed. And they wouldn't open it back up. So I'm like, nope, never again. And so Jeff said, I'm running. We had our producer there. She's like, I'm running. And so me and Murray, we were walking. So we were looking up on where the gate was. So we pulled in at like B29. Well, the gate for the next departure to Monroe was B28. I looked over there and people are going through the line. We just walked 50 yards and got on the next plane.
that's pretty,
Got on the plane and 10 minutes later we were in the air.
Yeah.
I said, I've never had that happen before.
that was pretty.
And it
fortunate.
was in a moment where it had to happen for me to be here. So
That was to get home.
that was to get home.
Wow,
So I'm happy, Al.
you are. So, Dad, just so you know, Alex found this yesterday. We were talking about your birthday. So, the minimum hourly wage the year you were born, 1946, was 40 cents an hour.
Whoa.
That was minimum wage back in the day.
I remember working in the oil field. The Robertson males in our close-knit family then, that we broke out working as men when we were 16.
Yeah.
16 means
Time to bring some
getting
bucks.
ready to hit the road and, working in the oil field. And to your point about the price, $1.86 an hour.
Oh, so you were doing quite well then compared to...
Roughnecking in the
Well, that
oil
was a little
field.
later than 46.
I thought it was good money.
It would have been the
$1.86 an hour.
late 50s, early 60s.
Wow.
I thought, man, I've hit the home run here. Of course, at that age, you're 16, but that goes into, I just handed it to
Yep.
my dad.
Yep.
Now, he was the driller over the crew.
Mm-hmm.
The crew was 3 people in it, Derek, man, a couple of floor hands, and Dad ran the rig. So he was getting about $2, a little over $2 an hour. I mean, the ramrod, just think about that.
Well, salary, the average annual income back then was $2,600 a year. A house cost $5,000, for I guess a new construction home. A new car was $1,000.
Yep. See, all this was happening with me. If you go back to 46 when I was born,
Right.
It goes into the 50s.
Yep. It cost 55 cents to go to the movie, and the gas was 21 cents a gallon
Yep,
in 46.
I remember it well.
It was $420 a year to go to Harvard, Zach, in this time. But here was an interesting one. So a computer, which they had made some comparisons to this list of 2006, a computer, which was about $300, a few years ago. In 1946, the only computer that was around cost $486,804.
Yep.
The price of computers has come down. That's good.
I was saying amen to that then and now also.
Yeah. But there was a computer. There was some kind of supercomputer around.
Right after World War II, and it had a lot to do with it. Right after the war ended in 45, the most peaceful time we've had was a long time.
Oh yeah.
It came about after World War II.
Well, that's the baby boomer. That was the idea that came along there because it was a great time.
I was one of them.
You were one of them.
My mama was carrying me in her womb in California. Dad was working at a big naval station.
Shipyard, wasn't it? Yeah.
Shipyard.
Yep.
So I've always said that my mother carried me. I came on the premises in California.
Yeah.
And it marked me for life.
And actually, Granny told me that she was in California for the war effort. She was out there working riveting on airplanes.
She worked on airplanes.
So, I mean, that was back in the day where everybody was in on the effort,
That is correct.
Everybody did their part.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible.
Well, I just got a text. This is live.
Oh, breaking news?
Breaking news. So, Phil, I hate to spoil your birthday, but there's a whole ribeye will be ready after this podcast for Phil's birthday. So happy birthday.
Man,
Boy, your
you are
birthday.
celebrating.
Whole
There
ribeye.
is. Oh, that's what I looked out there and I saw someone out there rummaging around, and it was Stone.
That was him.
So I like the fact you didn't check it out. You just left and thought, huh?
Oh, I went out there and see what was going on. And
That's a big deal.
He's getting ready
That's a
to
big deal.
smoke the meat.
And he had a big, whole, beautiful looking ribeye out at his house.
That would be fine to have a birthday like
Now
that.
that's
to walk
your
there.
kind of birthday,
Well,
right?
see, I'm in on that. I'll be following you down there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'll be getting on an airplane pulling the same move you did last
We'll let you know how it goes, Al. Sorry.
I'm going to miss out on that. So tell us a little bit about your travels, what you can tell us, because I know you were filming.
Well, we've been reading Luke, and my prep time was in airplanes, so which wasn't a lot. But I went to Missouri, then we went to Kansas, so we filmed a couple of episodes, just the actual treasure hunting part. And so they asked me, not to tell them about anything. Y'all, meaning you, the listeners. But there was a couple things that happened. Now, one, this wasn't filmed, but I had landed in St. Louis at some part in all this during the transition. And I had to get a rental car because I was by myself. I guess that was after the podcast. So, because everybody else had filmed without me.
Yeah.
And so I'm not sure what they'll do. Jace is busy, I guess, was day one. I wasn't there and they filmed. But I saw something I thought was incredible. So there's 8 lanes, 4 going one way, 4 going another. I'd never been to St. Louis. Have you ever been?
Mm-hmm. A few times.
Okay. Well, something catches the corner of my eye, and it looked like something supernatural. But there was a deer that said, I'm going for it.
Across 8 lanes.
Not one road, 8. And the deer was jumping at supernatural looking levels.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wall to wall cars, and I'm like, how is this happening? How is that? Because you just see him jump. Because I'm looking way off, and about 10 cars ahead of me, because I would just see him go up, and it was kind of hilly. I mean, it wasn't like I was on hills, but I would lose the deer, and I'd see the deer. It was just riveting action. How it was in a 100-car pileup, I'll never know. But then it jumped one time, and then I never saw him come up. And I was like, it looked like a NASCAR race in front of. It's like once the wreck happened, it was everybody for themselves in every conceivable direction.
Then
and I never saw the deer. I mean, it's like I know he got hit.
Yeah.
But you were just, and I look back and I was like, oh my goodness, that just happened. And so I went about a mile down the road, and now everybody's zooming over. Look, there's another one dead in the road. And I'm like, what is going on? It was one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. And I thought, there's a mix of cultures here, in the outdoors. But these deer, I mean, it was just it made me reflect on, there's just some things not worth it.
Yeah.
Choose a new trail.
The poor deer.
So that was one. That had nothing to do with anything I want to talk about. I just couldn't believe it. It was like, we're so civilized people, and a deer, it was just crazy.
We see a ton of them here hit on I-20, but you would
True.
expect that
I mean,
because we're
this
pretty
was
rural.
just town.
I would beg to differ with you that the culture is civilized.
Well, yeah, maybe that.
Oh, we're not civilized at all.
Yeah, maybe that. I meant
That whole story. That's the one.
We just got through talking about what was going on in the mid 40s and 50s.
Well, I was talking.
We were
about
civilized
the
then.
Industrial Revolution, I guess, instead of the spiritual side of things. So
I thought it was funny that Dad keyed in on that one word. So Zach, we get a lot of we call them onboarding calls with a lot of our sponsors, and so we have conversations with them, tell us about their product, and if there's a fit for our podcast. And so when the guys called us and we had a conversation at Barrel Buddy, we were super impressed with those guys from the moment we met them. Wouldn't you say that's true?
Oh, class act. Yeah, those guys are a lot of similarities. One, they love Jesus. Two, they were out in the field and invented a product to make the hunting experience better.
Yep.
Just like our family.
Yeah.
So we had an instant
small
bond.
business, loves God. We started off with a prayer, there was a link, which we love that on the podcast. We get to meet guys like this. And so the guys at Barrel Buddy have come up with a new way to be able to clean your barrel. And Jace, you can speak to the importance of having a clean barrel, can you not? When you're
must have a clean barrel.
Got to have it. So, in the old days, they had the patches, the bore snake, a lot of issues why that doesn't work too well, leaves residue. You can't tell whether your gun is really, your gun barrel is really clean or not. And so these guys, this particular product is safe to use with commercial solvents and oils. You can use it dry as well. During or after shooting, when you don't have time for cleaning, thorough cleaning, you can get this done very quickly. It's American made, which we love as well. So we want you to check these guys out. great business. Cleaning guns for responsible gun owners is what they're all about. So we guarantee you'll love them. BarrelBuddy.com, BARREL Buddy, BarrelBuddy.com. Check them out.
So introducing our text with, and I want to tell another story that happened. So, I was, you usually only hear Luke 2, and you only hear that during Christmas. I mean, the end of Luke 1 and Luke 2, right? Yeah, birth of Jesus.
It's
Luke
a very, very well traversed Christmas text, no doubt about it.
And so, really it's Luke 2, not even chapter 1 much.
Right.
That's why we spent a couple podcasts just on Luke 1 through 4. Because when you think about where they started, and Zach, you weren't with us, but to bring you up to speed, I'd be interested to hear your take on this before I tell my story. Luke seems to be, he really made this thought of like, I didn't just dream this up. This wasn't just willy-nilly fantasy book of fiction. I mean, he started off saying, look, many have undertaken trying to draw up an account of the things that were fulfilled. And it was based on eyewitnesses. And then he's like, I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning. And so I could write this account so that you could be certain. Because you think, why is he starting off like that? Because I think we're so familiar with this story, especially in Christmas, that you forget how powerful it is and how supernatural this is. I mean, this is just not some story. We're talking about, this is like a supernatural soap opera.
Look,
The first chapter.
Yeah.
when I asked the college professor, his brother, when I asked, his job was a college professor, now he's retired, and I asked him to come up with every kind of power, the rise and fall of all the powers. I said, go back as far as you can go and find the first power. It was somewhere, I done forgot where, but all these powers leading into who is now the most powerful, America, Russia, China, India. These are powers that have been, but if you look at them, Mao Zedong was running around in 1970. I mean, the Chinese were nothing. I mean, we built China in 50 years.
Right.
And now it's a powerhouse of the world.
Now they're about to overtake us.
Yeah. But one of the things you read in Luke, he says he has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. And look at this. The very thing I sent the college professor to look at, the empires that have risen and fallen. He has brought, God Almighty, he has brought down rulers from their thrones.
Yeah, well, that was Mary's.
So I would wonder
Hold on, Phil, we're losing your mic.
why these empires rise and fall. Read books like Luke.
Well, that was Mary's.
That was Mary.
That was Mary's song. So how's this teenage girl?
Teenage girl.
That's my point.
Well, to your point, Jace, when I read this, I had the same thought. It's way more than a story. It's not a. I watched the interview with Ben Shapiro, and one of my favorite apologists, probably no, not one of my favorite apologists, this guy named William Lane Craig. Absolutely, dude's like brilliant. And so he interviewed William Lane Craig on his podcast recently, and somebody sent it to me because they knew I've read everything William Lane Craig's ever written. And they got into the whole thing. They got into a lot of apologetics. Some of the stuff we got into earlier on how do we know God exists, and he went through the arguments. But then when they got to the person of Jesus, it was interesting. That was such an interesting conversation. And Ben's really open to have those kind of dialogues on the show, which I really appreciate. I mean, he doesn't have like softball interviews. He brings in people that will really challenge his worldview. And so he asked Dr. Craig, but how do you, why Jesus? What, and Craig was awesome. I mean, you guys got to check that podcast out if you get a chance. But he basically said that the whole thing stands and falls with the person of Jesus. And Shapiro was like, yeah, well, one of the reasons why we don't believe that Jesus was the Messiah was because he did not fulfill the nature of these Old Testament prophecies. The Jewish people realized that these were political prophecies. I'm paraphrasing here, but these were political prophecies about a political kingdom, and so Jesus didn't come to do that. And Craig's response was like, yeah, exactly. That's the same thing that they missed beforehand. And I think that it hits what Jase is saying here. It's more than a story. It's more than a political kingdom. It's more than read the book of Hebrews. It's more than Moses. It's more than the tabernacle. It's more than the temple. It's more than all these things, these Old Testament prophecies and this old way, that those were like precursors. So when we get into the text today, all my notes are kind of centered around that same idea, Jase. I know I wasn't here for the first 4 verses, but what you said resonated with me.
The context of it really hit me. And I read this like I'd never read it before, because I just thought, when I was a kid, our grandma and grandpa, every day after lunch, they would watch, what was the soap opera? As the World Turns.
As the World Turns.
Days of Our Lives. and
all my
children. It was
children.
the only time that we had to be completely quiet. And they were on the edge of that couch every day, just riveted. And it was always just seemed so just fake to me. I thought, this is not real. But it was just, the music. Boom. I'm not your husband. Or, I'm not, it was just, boom. I thought, why are they watching this crud? It just seemed, but when I put that in this, he starts off talking about we investigated, we're eyewitnesses. And it starts off with, here's a priest and his wife who are old, and we did read this. They're well along in years, and the Lord heard their prayers. And I just put it in soap opera fashion. It's like, here he is in the temple, and he has this encounter with an angel. I mean, that's pretty riveting if you could capture that and watch this story. And it's like your prayer has been answered. So this miracle's going to happen, but he doesn't believe it because he's basically doing an anatomy check and realizing how old he is and saying, oh, we're going to have a son?
Right.
I don't believe you.
Which, Jase, let's think about this before you move forward on this, because this is a thought that popped in my mind when I read it. Number one, the place that he went to receive this revelation was the temple. So he goes into the temple to meet with God and to burn the incense. And then God speaks to him through the angel Gabriel in the temple. And he tells him, you're going to have a kid. And then his response was this age thing, which, the first story that popped in my head from the Old Testament was Abraham.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much here of that's reminiscent of Abraham's story. And so, like, say if you didn't know anything about Jesus coming on the scene, and you're just in this moment and you're thinking about this, I mean, to me, this is almost like this one that's coming. I mean, this may be the moment. He's in the right place, which is the temple, to receive this communication from God. I mean, God himself shows up. When he sees Gabriel in the representation of God, he was so fearful. And I thought about, when I read that part, I thought about John on the Isle of Patmos. I thought about Saul on the road to Damascus. Like you're starting to have an encounter here with something much bigger and more powerful than yourself. And he receives this revelation. It's like, you're going to have a kid. And I was just thinking, man, like if I was in this moment, the story would have been, oh, this is the one. This is the one that was talked about with Abraham because of the similarities. And then the very next part of that is when he gets to Mary, and the way that he talked to Mary was completely different because he didn't do it in the temple. He did it he went to Nazareth, which John 1 says nothing good comes out of Nazareth. Nothing good comes out of Nazareth, and that's the place. That's the actual place where he went to bring the Messiah forth. And I was just thinking about her response was she was also very reluctant, because what did she say?
Well, true, but before we get to her, because there, if you looked at this, I mean, if you titled this, maybe the old man and the teenager, because they have a similar instance, and the drama in Zechariah's case was in verse 12. When Zechariah saw the angel, he was startled and gripped with fear. This kind of goes on with my soap opera theme. All of a sudden he's just, because there's an angel. And so they have.
But if it's a true soap opera, when that happens, then we go to commercial.
Exactly. So, and the reason I'm saying this, because a lot of people who will watch modern day soap operas, it's called TV, and enjoy it. But they'll go to the Bible here and they'll say, oh, this is, somebody, they made this up. But the more you look at the details, it makes way more sense than anything the Hollywood mind can conceive, is my point.
So we do a lot of travel, Jase. You're doing a lot more these days. Spend a little time on some planes, trains, and automobiles. Zach as well. One of I think probably the best things about air travel, especially for me, is being able to kind of get lost in my music and kind of get into my own world. You
had me going there. I thought, what, is there something good about it? Oh, yeah.
That's the only thing good I can figure is somehow to kind of retreat from the moment when you say,
oh, you have to be listening to something, because when the stewardess comes on, they're always too loud.
Oh, way loud.
And it drown. And I got it.
Yeah,
I got everything I need to know. Thank you.
That's right.
or you got the situation that I had recently this past week, and I'm sitting there, and I can't complain because I have 5 kids, but the one behind me was not mine, and it was. Oh,
you know what?
I was like,
you know what you need
Lord.
then in that moment, Zach? You need your Raycon earbuds.
Yes.
Which they're a sponsor of our podcast, and we love these guys. And another thing that's great about Raycon is they're a lot cheaper than a lot of the other products out there, and yet you're not losing any quality. You don't have to pay an arm and a leg for them. They understand this economy, and so they're offering some great deals. They offer buy now, pay later options. Right now, you can pay as low as $18 at checkout. They have an easy and free return guarantee. They offer 2 years of product protection insurance for just a few bucks. They also offer free domestic shipping and flat fee international shipping as well. They've got over 50,000 5-star reviews. We love these guys. Fit well into your ear. My daughter's a runner. She runs in hers. She tells me there's no issues. I quit running, Jase, a long time ago, but this is a great product. Water, sweat resistant, 8 hours of playtime. So check them out. Go to buy Raycon, B-U-Y, Raycon, R-A-Y-C-O-N, /unashamed to get 15% off your Raycon order. That's buyraycon.com /unashamed to score 15% off. Check them out.
So in verse 18, when Zechariah asked the angel, how can I be sure of this?
Which is a different question, too, than Mary asked, but we'll get to that.
Exactly, but he said, I'm old, but the angel pretty much tells you his heart, because when the angel said in verse 19, I am Gabriel, I stand in the presence of God.
Don't you think the way he states his name, it's almost he's a little offended in his answer. Like, wait a minute, I am Gabriel.
Yeah, but here was the key in verse 20, and now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens. Because now here's the heart, because you didn't believe my words. So no matter, even though Mary's response seems to be similar than Zechariah just didn't believe it. Now, one is, there's a lot of reasons for that. And I think the main one is, now this is just my opinion, but I think it's pretty obvious. Even if you look at the conversion rate to Jesus across Christianity, I think over 40 is like 4%. And so I'm getting back on my, the older you get, the harder it is to believe anything. Mm-hmm. You get your mind made up, because you got to put yourself in his position. Him and his wife have been they had been faithful. They were considered blameless. They had done These are high character people, and they had prayed. But at some point, they said, you know what? God just said no.
But think about too, Jace, Zechariah's mindset is really as good a man as he is. He has the same mindset that Jesus kept running into. Every time Jesus would do something, they'd say, "Well, now, what's the sign that we can know that you're really who you say you are?" And Jesus kept saying, "That was the sign." And that's almost what Gabriel was like. Wait a minute, I just told you what was going to happen. What do you mean?
Exactly.
How can I know this?
It's a good point, because it's like you say, well, how come Mary, believed it during the well, she experienced it.
Right.
It's when you're talking to an angel.
Here's your sign.
This is it.
We don't need another
But
one.
it just shows you how stubborn people can be. Look, I really think it's a lesson in being open-minded. I mean, my biggest takeaway from this was that. I thought, I'm over 50. I need to have an open mind. Really. About things that you just think, you get set in your ways, or you think something's a certain way. Because here's a teenager who had a different response to a same kind of encounter. So that's where we left off, was in verse 21 before we get to Mary. So we got Zechariah. He comes out of the temple doing charades, which is another soap opera moment. I mean, that's hilarious. They're like, so meanwhile, the people were waiting for Zechariah and wondered why he had stayed so long in the temple. He was talking to an angel. When he came out, he could not speak. They realized he had seen a vision in the temple, for he kept making signs to them, but remained unable to speak. That's why I called that charades. Did you get it out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought that was funny.
That's pretty good.
When his time of service was completed, he returned home. After this, his wife, Elizabeth, became pregnant and for 5 months remained in seclusion, which I think is kind of interesting because, I mean, do you just not own this, that you're old and you're pregnant? They just couldn't do it. So, anyway, something beautiful is going to come out of this. But you talk about a soap opera. Now we have a grandma who's pregnant.
Yeah.
Just picture that. She comes out and she's like, "Hey, I have an announcement, family. I'm pregnant." Dun 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 dun.
and we got a husband,
and he's doing charades.
He's doing charades. He can't say anything.
What happened to him? I don't know. He
He's
only
like-
uses hand signals.
He's. If you saw this, you'd say, "Oh, they just completely made all this up.
This is madness."
This is madness." So then the Lord said in verse 25, the Lord has done this for me, she said. In these days he has shown his favor and taken away my disgrace among the people, because she felt disgraced because she could never have a child. So we get to our next section.
Hang on. Before you move on, I want to make one point.
Okay.
Because we didn't cover this, and I just want to touch on it. One of the things I think, to your earlier point, Jace, that Luke does, remember, he's writing to a Gentile audience. All the other Gospels, John the Baptist just kind of shows up because everybody knows about John the Baptist. They know his role. They know all these things. But Luke, I think, goes into such detail about his pre-birth, birth, who he was, because the Gentiles aren't going to know who John the Baptist was. They don't know,
No.
you know what I'm saying? They don't understand that. So when he said that about the spirit and power of Elijah, in the Jewish mind, that meant something very specific, but the Gentile mind, they would have had to understood what that meant. And so
he's catching them up to speed.
He's catching them up to speed.
Well, and I
Exactly.
think it's even deeper than that. I was going to get into this in the next section, but
A lot of it just to show how powerful God is.
Right.
well, and also look how practical. He didn't, because look, to expect Mary to believe all this is kind of hard to ask for here.
A lot.
And to endure it. So he actually, and you have somebody's got to be, who's going to baptize Jesus, because that's going to happen. It's like this plot line gets deeper the more you analyze this. God created a family dynamic here, which I think it's a practical application to us.
Mm-hmm.
Because Mary didn't write that song that you referenced
Yep.
until she visited with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You're like, well, why'd she visit with Elizabeth? Because the angel, subconsciously recommended that. Because you just think how difficult that would be. You're a teenager. I mean, have you seen a teenager lately? And all of a sudden, an angel comes to this teenage girl and it's like, guess what? You're going to be the mother of the Son of God. Do what?
Yeah, go throw all your drugs in the trash can.
I mean, it's just, so you have John the Baptist, who's this family dynamic of them being able to go through this process together. And you're like, well, why is that in here like this? Because that's why I said this is more realistic than you think, because it wasn't just him writing, oh, here's what happened. There was a girl who magically had a baby. No, it was all wrapped around a family experience, a forerunner of Jesus. Right. Mary having this community with Elizabeth so they could actually share. I mean, how would you even relate? You have no one to relate what you're going through with, but God provided.
And the fact that they brought that community together. Let's take another break. So, Jase, I don't know if you know this, but it's very important to take care of your liver now more than ever.
I appreciate that helpful tip, Al.
Yeah.
What's next?
And there are a few verses in the Bible I found about the liver. There's a few of them that are in there. So, and basically it says you want to look out for the liver. That's important. The latest data from the American Heart Association indicates that adults with fatty liver were 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than those without. So obviously a fatty liver is not.
How do I know that I have a fatty liver?
It's a good question, Jay. So you can have your blood checked, and Zach and I both done this recently. Mine was for health insurance, but or life insurance, whatever it was we were trying to get, and your liver enzymes come back high. And it may not just be that; it could be other indications, but one of those could be that you have a fatty liver. So
Jace, you can be skinny and still have a fatty liver.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're not.
It's not just because you're fat. Because my first thought was, I'm kind of fatty everywhere, so a fatty liver makes sense. But it's not just that. It could be just that it's.
Could it be a sign that maybe you're feeling pain in the liver area? Or
that could be a sign.
It could definitely be a sign.
That's kind of.
Yeah, the American Liver Foundation says that 100 million Americans have fatty liver. So that's basically almost a third of everybody that you see out there. So obviously a lot of people are at risk.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff gets thrown at the liver: cholesterol, alcohol, toxins, Tylenol, cigarettes, statins. All these things are not good for the liver. They produce a sluggish, fatty liver that makes us gain weight and lose energy. And so one of our sponsors is a company called Liver Health Formula, and they have a new supplement. It's all natural. Contains 12 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. I am currently taking them. I'm going to check those numbers. It's manufactured right here in the USA. It's approved by American doctors. And so they're looking to ignite your fat-burning metabolism, boost your energy, transform how you look and feel. So I want you to try Liver Health Formula. If you do it now, you're going to also receive a free bottle of blood sugar formula, which helps you reduce your sugar cravings when you order today. So try Liver Health Formula by going to getliverhelp.com/unashamed to get your free bonus gift. That's getliverhelp.com/unashamed. I love that, Jace. And that's why I want to bring this up about the idea of Elijah, because Jesus is the most prophesied about in the Old Testament, the Messiah. But then the second most that you would see was the forerunner. And so, I mean, I love it that Luke takes the time to build the case that while Jesus is the most important human ever born because he was also God, I would argue, and Jesus said, there's no one greater among men than John the Baptist. I would say he was one of the, if not the second most, a pretty important guy because he pointed all of Israel to who Jesus was.
Just think about what this family did. Think about what this family did. I think it should be a model of how God uses family, just ordinary families.
That's right.
To bring about great things.
But that was my point earlier of how reminiscent this is of Abraham, because this is like what's happening here with John the Baptist coming on the scene. I mean, up to this point, we don't know about Jesus yet, right? All we know about is whoever this guy is that's coming through Zechariah here in the temple. Like we're talking about on the magnitude of an Abraham. I mean, we're this
Yeah.
is what's going to happen. Like this child that is, your wife is carrying, like that. He's going to have such a prominent role in the kingdom. I mean, even superseding Abraham. I mean, no one's greater than John the Baptist. I mean, I think that's the point here. And as high as you can elevate this interaction here and the significance of what that is, as we're going to see in a moment, the very next section is just, it blows everything out of the water.
Exactly.
To Phil's point, I mean, it is the power. This is a crescendo moment of the power of God coming to earth.
And the last spoken word in the book of Malachi before all this happened, for almost 400 years earlier, was, "I will send you the prophet Elijah before that great day."
He's the type, John the Baptist, when he rolled in, love him or hate him, they all feared him. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
They really did.
Yeah. Well, and we know now
And
why.
he had no fear whatsoever.
No, we know that he was a special vessel, and thank you, Luke, for taking the time to show us how special he really was. All right, so I wanted to get that in before we got to.
So in 26, it says, in the 6th month, God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth, a town in Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph, a descendant of David. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went to her and said, "Greetings, you who are highly favored. The Lord is with you." So Mary was greatly troubled at his words and wondered what kind of greeting this might be. So that's where we're making the reference that, Zechariah, John the Baptist's future dad, you seem to have the same thing happen, but a different result.
And you notice that Mary, and maybe I never thought about her age, Jace, but for whatever reason, Mary is one of the few people in the Bible, when she encounters an angel, most of them are terrified at the sight of him. Now, she could have been, it just didn't tell it here, although
the angel says, "Don't be afraid."
But it says she was troubled by what he said more than what he looked like. It seemed to bother her that he spoke highly of her.
Well, exactly.
Don't forget the place, though. Don't forget the place. I think this is important.
That's a good point I hadn't thought about.
Yeah, the place where he met with Zechariah was in the temple. Think about that. I mean, this is the last really important meeting in the temple. And then when he goes to establish the Son of God, the coming of the Son of God, he does not go to the temple. Where does he go? He goes to Nazareth, which that was the whole point. He went to the lowliest of places. He went to the place. I don't want to say any names because we could all talk about certain areas of the country or cities that, whatever the worst you can imagine. It's like he went there. He didn't go to the epicenter of the temple, which you would have thought. Man, the coming Messiah, surely it's going to that's going to have something. It's got to happen somewhere in the temple, right? And that's not what happened.
Exactly.
With John the Baptist and the coming and the end of that age, and John the Baptist being the last one, the forerunner of the Messiah, that was the close of that temple, and then move, or at least to signify that, and then boom, there's something new happening. There's some kind of new, more, or Hebrew writer calls it more perfect temple or more perfect tabernacle coming. But he went, just like Jesus does, went to the worst of the worst places, a place where nothing good can come from that place, Nazareth.
Another thing to your point, Zach, I hadn't thought about this till you said it, was, and we'll read this at the very end with John the Baptist after he was born, once this all happened and this prediction in the temple, where he spent all of his ministry? Out in the desert, in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
He wasn't in the temple courts, John the Baptist.
That's why Luke had reminded everybody nothing is impossible for God, because there's a lot of people that would say for that to all come together and to bring children out and the Son of God, and while you're at it, coming out of the wombs of these kind of people, you'd say, no way. That's asking too much. It helps the reader to say, by the way, I know you're saying ain't no way all that could come together. Nothing is impossible for God. That's what it's all under. Nothing.
To your point, you know what's more difficult? As difficult as it would be for an old man and an old woman to have a baby, you know it's even
You
more
would
difficult
say
than
impossible, right?
Well,
that.
Impossible.
Near impossible.
Near
they're
impossible.
Near
impossible
impossible.
unless we
But-
figured out a way, okay. But
But you got all the anatomy parts. You got all that. You
Yeah.
got the male, the female. You got the parts are there. Now, so maybe there's some kind of medicine or something. Now, you want to talk about like a next level impossibility?
Yeah.
Next level impossibility is a virgin birth.
Yep.
So it's interesting. In the temple, he gives something crazy. Yeah, you're going to have a kid. Yeah, I'm old. Well, I'm too old. Well, that's one level of difficulty. Another level of difficulty is to say, "Oh, I'm a virgin." Now it is literally impossible. There is no possible way
That's
under
right.
any circumstance
That
that
is
a virgin could be impregnated. And that to me is he goes to the worst of the worst places to announce. To Jase's point at the beginning, it's such a bigger story. It's not just a story. We're talking about something here that's so big, and in this moment, in this direction from Gabriel to Mary, we're seeing the power of a God that nothing, absolutely nothing, is impossible for this God.
So one of our favorite new sponsors is a group called Mighty Oaks Foundation Mission, and we had their founder, Chad Robichaux, on our podcast a few months back. And Jase, we've gotten to know him personally quite a bit better, and his family, and just, you get to know people kind of in this world, and you really find some fantastic human beings. And Chad Robichaux is one of those. And he's dedicated his life not only to military service, but also just committed to Christ, but now committed to helping other vets and also first responders through a lot of difficult issues. I don't think we can say enough good things about him, can we, Jase?
oh, he's fantastic. Yeah, he's one guy. Every time he sends me a text, it's always something fascinating.
Yeah.
That's totally unselfish that he's a part of. So.
And he's in the news quite a bit, which is great. He's kind of become known now as a guy that can speak to a lot of what's going on in the country. And so that puts him out there, which is great. But it lets people know about Mighty Oaks, which is even more important because that's what they're doing to help vets. They've served over 400,000 veterans. They've had 4,500 go through their legacy program. They have 350,000 books and resources that they provided for the military and first responder community. So they're doing great work. There's nothing out there that's as effective as what these guys are doing. And so what we're asking you to do is consider giving to their scholarship fund. It takes about $3,500 to sponsor a warrior through the program, but anything you give will help that process and help make it happen. So they help people who are struggling with the effects of trauma. They lead them to restoration, hope, and purpose. We all know how high the suicide rates are. So we want you to check them out. Donate now. Or go to mightyoaksprograms.org/unashamed to get more information about their programs. mightyoaksprograms.org/unashamed. Even the smallest amount makes a big difference in these warriors' lives. So check them out and support them. We highly support these guys.
Yeah, that's why I wrapped it around the soap opera, because at first glance, you think, oh, this is crazy. The more you look at it, you're like, this is really powerful.
Atheists would laugh at this.
If they only glanced, if they only glanced, but the more you dig into this, which is why Luke had such a profound introduction, because he said, this is based on the eyewitnesses. And when you start putting it all together, it actually makes sense in such a clever way, way beyond the years of when this was written, when you think about how scholarly this is. Because it's now you're fixed to see a picture of the Most High becoming the most low for humanity.
Right.
Because that's a theological fact. It's like if you're just foolish or an idiot or, uneducated or however you want to say it, you can't, if you try to act smart, no, you're never going to pull that off. But you can be incredibly smart and play dumb.
Yep.
You can do it. And so really that's in that line of thought is what happens here. God, in showing his love, becomes low because he is the Most High, because he has the power to make man from dust, to create a virgin birth. I mean, but you really see Mary buy into this as this goes on. So I'll keep reading. Mary was greatly troubled at his words, this verse 29, and wondered what kind of greeting that might be. But the angel said to her, don't be afraid. You have found favor with God. That's the second time the angel has said, you have found favor with God. You will be with child and give birth to a son, and you are to give him the name Jesus, which means God saves. Yahweh saves. That's what his name means. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. That's why I thought, that Most High is going to be born in one of the lowly places of the earth. And basically compared to who God is, to come through a birth canal,
There was no.
that's about as humble as you can get.
There was no parade with the
And where at
unveiling.
was in a stable in a barn.
Yeah.
It even became more humble because of the circumstance. You're right.
And then when you look at this through the soap opera eyes, you're like, what? I mean, here she's, in a barn, pregnant.
Now later he comes riding up on the donkey, and you say, "Yeah." Well,
All right, wait for it. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever. Dun, dun, dun. He's never going to die. His kingdom will never end. I think this is a valid question. If you heard all this, not only are you going to give birth to the Most High, the Son of God, he's going to reign forever. How will this be? So
Yeah.
that's not I don't believe you. It's just,
How's this?
how is it going to happen? Because I'm a virgin.
That's what I took it as.
Yeah.
I'm a
It was
virgin.
more of a statement of like,
And I think it
Tell
was
me how
more
best
of an
to-
insinuation on when do you want me to get married? Do you want me to get married now? Or, because she was engaged to be
Right.
married, which is a.
because the implication is she could have gotten married and gone through this process, but he's going to explain that, as he in the next segment. But
And I
mean,
think you realize that just because you're dating doesn't mean you're a virgin. But she just said, hey, I'm a virgin.
just to let you, in case the Angel Land didn't know,
I think that's.
in case they didn't tell you guys this,
I'm a virgin, and I know that's not possible. So what do you have a guy? I mean, because I got a guy, but he's not the guy yet. I mean, that was basically the fill in the blanks. The angel answered, of all the things that you thought he was going to say,
yeah, this was the shocker.
the Holy Spirit will come upon you and the power of the Most High. Dun, dun, dun. Because now Mary says, I'm going to marry a spirit. Yes, I'm in love with a ghost.
This is like
This is beyond anything Hollywood has ever conceived.
the closest thing that came to this was Ghost, but yeah.
Well, that's why I was going to say, at the end of the day, they take all these same principles and make their little movies
That's
about them.
right. Yeah.
This was the manuscript where it all came from. The power of the Most High will overshadow you.
Before you leave that word overshadow, same one used to describe the cloud over the tabernacle in the glory, the one where the glory of God descended on earth, and also, Jace, the cloud that enveloped the transfiguration. That's
Yeah,
that word
that's key.
overshadowed.
We only
Yeah,
have
that's
3
key, but-
minutes. I'm never going to get to my story. I'll have to do that in
No, you
overtime.
have to
So
do
let
that
me
in
read the end of this. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God. Even Elizabeth, your relative, is going to have a child. So here's the
That's
suggestion.
breaking news right there because she probably didn't know that.
In her old age. Oh, it's like a twist. Dun, dun. Then you show Elizabeth. She's over there grinning. Zechariah, he's doing the emotions.
He's doing a charade.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, so this is just getting even more and more unbelievable. They're going to have a child. And I do think this was hint suggestion that maybe y'all should hang out. And she who was said to be barren is in her 6th month. For nothing is impossible with God.
Man, that's
Now, other translations I noticed on this, and I wanted to make mention of this before we move on, says something to the effect of the word, every word from God, the word from God is always true. I mean, it's like a totally different translation. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. But either one's fine with me because it goes back to because this is what the Lord said. So, same principle. So, in verse 38, now here's what I love. And this is the difference in Zechariah. And look, and you got to remember, Zechariah was favored by God. He just got chastised a little bit where he couldn't speak. And Zach, while you weren't here on those, I think God was giving husbands just an overall view of your role in the birth process, especially in the first one. You need to show up and shut up. Because his speech did return, but we've all learned
We've
that.
had a lot of children, Zach. Is that a pretty good policy, Zach?
That's what I call good advice.
So 38, but look at her heart. Because really, look, I'm gonna tell you something profoundly. This is what we all do when we come to Christ. When you understand the presence of Christ, she said, "I am the Lord's servant." I mean, she surrendered right here.
Yep.
May it be to me as you have said. Then the angel left her. I mean, what a heart. I'm talking about humble. Of course, then she goes and sees Elizabeth.
If we had translated what she said in Redneck, it would have been "Get her done."
I think her heart was right and she surrendered. And you're not as crazy as this is for a teenage girl to have the spiritual maturity and humility to say, oh, because she's going to be disgraced. I mean, she knows that. And I thought of something else. I mean, because it doesn't talk about Joseph. And so he was going to dismiss her.
Yeah.
Because of the public display.
Yeah, the Matthew account gives his account.
But then, and they never had sex, until Jesus was born. But it just told me that when you know the presence of Jesus is there, you can really make good decisions. You can do good things.
Yeah.
So in your dating relationship, there's the bar, and it's high.
So we're out of time, and in overtime, Jase has a story for us. Also, I thought we should name this soap opera. So I've got my name, and so I'll hear everybody's name for the soap opera in the overtime. If you want to follow us over, blazetv.com/unashamed. A reminder before we go, the week of May 7th, we will no longer be releasing Unashamed on Sundays. That's going to move to Thursday, so it'll be Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So be looking for that on the week of May 7th.
What was the name?
We're going to do it in overtime.
Oh,
see you there. blazetv.com/unashamed.
Thanks for listening to the Unashamed podcast. Help us out by rating us on iTunes. And don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube, and be sure to click that little bell to get notified about new episodes. And for even more content that you won't get anywhere else, subscribe to Blaze TV at blazetv.com/unashamed.